Welcome, everybody. My name is Chrissy Allen. I am the Development Director at Blue Hill Heritage Trust, and this is our Friends from the Field webinar series. I'm joined today by Alex Drenga, who's the Stewardship Director for Island Heritage Trust. And this webinar, for those of you who are new, is a collaborative series between our two land trusts that has been going on for quite a while now, since the pandemic started, and we're excited to keep it going. I'm very excited for today's webinar because back in December, I had my first trip out of the state since COVID hit, and I went really far away. I went all the way over to Laguna Beach, California. And while I was there, my family had the real pleasure of getting to visit the Pacific Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach and to learn more about the really incredible work they're doing. And I just felt like there's so many incredible organizations on the East Coast doing work that we hear from all the time, that it would be really fun to hear from these folks, learn what they're doing over there, and figure out how we really are all connected in this big world. So I'm gonna do a quick introduction of our guests in a minute. Alex, do you want to chime in about a few things?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex. I want to thank Chrissy for letting me join today. So there's a chat box at the bottom of the screen. We've been asking folks to let us know where they're tuned in from. So it looks like we have some people from all over the country right now, which is awesome. But you can also use that chat feature to ask questions to our guests here. And then at the end of the program, we're going to allow for a question and answer period as long as time allows. So let's get cracking so we have some time for questions, I guess.
That sounds great. We're going to get a little tour of the facility and meet some of these friends too. So we're joined today by Peter Chang. Peter is the Chief Executive Officer at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center, and he currently serves on the Conservation Committee for the International Association of Aquatic Animal Medicine. Peter is also currently on the Forbes Nonprofit Council and the Nonprofit Advisory Council for 1OC, and also Dr. Alyssa Deming. And Dr. Deming is the Vice President of Conservation Medicine and Science at PMMC. She's responsible for the medical care of all in-hospital patients and provides the care to live dolphins, pinnipeds that are stranded alive on Orange County beaches. She's the chair of the Sea Lion Cancer Consortium and leads the sea lion cancer research at PMMC. And her principal interest and research is in the study of disease patterns in marine mammal populations to better understand the impact of human and environmental factors on their ecosystem. She has a whole long list of other incredible things that she does and is up to. And I really encourage you to visit PMMC's website to learn more about their really incredible staff and ways that you can support their work. So I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, and Peter, I'm going to let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Chrissy. And again, thank you for having us. I just wanted to welcome everyone and just say a few words about our organization, then I'm going to hand it off to Alyssa. But Pacific Marine Mammal Center celebrated its 50th anniversary last year, which is still amazing to me. Started by 2 lifeguards. And the reason that they started rescuing stranded marine mammals is because before they rescued them, how they used to handle it back in the day is they would shoot that animal in the head and bury it in the beach. And they knew that there was something else that was better for these animals that could be done. And that was done back in 1971. Since then, we've rescued over 10,000 animals. And that's our bread and butter of what we do. We are a rescue organization. We handle 52 miles of coastline along Orange County shorelines. But that it's a reactive program. We don't do anything until we get the call from the public or from lifeguards, Harbor Patrol. And so the way that we kind of leverage that to make that broader impact is that we have a very robust education program. We reached over 26,000 children last year, both on site and through our virtual programs. We're in 12 different children's hospitals across the country, doing a lot of work with vets with PTSD, as well as foster kids and children in low-income communities. But in addition to that, and that's where we're going to focus our talk today, is we do a lot with research. Research allows us to hopefully get in front of some of these issues that we're seeing, not only with these marine mammals, but also with the ocean waters. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Alyssa Deving to talk more about the research and how we collaborate with different organizations and universities across the country to partner up with these projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Peter and Chrissy, for the great introduction. My name is Dr. Alyssa Deming, like Peter said. I'm really excited to talk to you guys. We were chatting a little bit before we started that I'm originally an East Coaster too. And a lot of this stuff we do has similar overlap with marine mammal stranding networks that exist on the East Coast as well. So the Southern California is my perfect sweet spot because I love cetaceans, so dolphins and whales, and I also love pinnipeds, and we've got a beautiful mix of sea lions and seals out here. So you guys that I've seen, some of you are kind of all over, so that's awesome, but I see a lot of you are from like the New England Northeast kind of area. So you guys have your gray seals and your harbor seals, and they're adorable. But we have some pinnipeds over here on this coast too, some sea lions that are actually my favorite animal to work with because they're so gregarious and they're such troublemakers. I just love their personalities. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about what we do here at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center. Excited to get your questions and have a little bit of a dialogue, and then we'll bring you downstairs to introduce you to some of our patients. So just to get started, the picture you guys should be seeing on your screen is what we call the barn in the canyon. So we are in Laguna Beach Canyon, which is one of the most beautiful, magical places. It's a national park. So there's a lot of hiking trails around us, and then one of the most beautiful beach towns, Laguna Beach, right down the street from us. We are a community-based organization. We're a small nonprofit that is funded and supported by the community. So we really appreciate all of our donors. And we also put a lot of the workload on volunteers. So that's how our local community kind of comes out and helps make our work and our mission here possible. Because we're a small nonprofit, we couldn't afford the staff that we would need to really provide the medical care that the patients need in hospital. So by having the community get engaged and come here and help get them fed and make sure they have a clean, warm place to stay and get their medical treatments is really integral to the Pacific Marine Mammal Center as a whole. So you guys can see this overview snapshot of the barn. We'll do a walkthrough of it downstairs towards the end and some of our pools for our patients. And then the left brick area that you see is our visitors yard. So we are open to the general public. It's free, no cost. You can just come and see the patients as they're getting their care here at our hospital. So I should say that this is one of our founders in the right, one of the harbor seals. The story that Peter was saying is very real. We've been around for 50 years now. And a little girl asked a lifeguard, you know, if he saves lives, why isn't he helping that little harbor seal that looks like it's not doing so well? And ever since then, that's how we got developed over the next 50 years. So see something, say something kind of thing. If you think you need to see an animal in distress, you know, help that animal and call somebody to help. So I will say our bread and butter is the rescue, release, and rehab of patients that show up sick in Orange County. On the left are California sea lion pups, and on the right are elephant seal weaners, we call them, because they're just weaning from their mom typically by the time they strand. The vast majority of the patients that come through our hospital are, number one, pinnipeds, so seals and sea lions. We also get Guadalupe fur seals, harbor seals, elephant seals, northern fur seals, and California sea lions. Those are kind of our major patient base. And the vast majority of those animals are young animals. So those animals are getting weaned from their moms, and they're trying to learn how to survive out in the wild on their own. Something that's been really interesting to me throughout my past like 10, 15 years in my career is that a lot of the reasons that bring the animals into rehab centers are either directly or indirectly related to humans. So we were in something called an unusual mortality event. We'll talk a little bit more about that briefly about whales, but the picture that you see in the left-hand side of your screen right now is a bunch of baby sea lions during that unusual mortality event of young sea lions we had from 2013 to 2016. And that was an event that was associated with warm water off of our coast that resulted in fish moving away or too deep to where the baby sea lions couldn't get to them. So we were getting inundated with starving young baby sea lions. And that's just one example of how the stranding patterns of marine mammals can kind of show us that the ocean is having some issues. So sometimes it's hard to pick up those subtle things that are going on an ecosystem level. But if we have regular baseline data of expected marine mammal strandings, and we make the effort to try and figure out why they're stranding in increased numbers, that can direct what some of the issues are out in the ocean and help direct policy makers and natural resource managers in a way that they can help improve whatever those conditions are to hopefully prevent future unusual mortality events, protect marine mammals, but also our mission is for ocean stewardship as a whole. So also trying to do some things and figure out how to base our research questions around questions that will help conservation and help resource managers make decisions that will improve the environment that our patients go back to after they're done being here at the hospital. So that's my little soapbox about what we do here, but I will also say not all patients can be checked in. So as much as I wish we had a pool big enough to hold onto a sick baleen whale that weighs 40,000 pounds, that's not an option. So a lot of the work that we do is also kind of taking our show on the road. So when we do see whales that are sick or injured, we have a whole whale disentanglement team. Those of you on the East Coast should be very familiar with this idea. If you're into marine mammals at all, the East Coast of the United States has been the pivotal point to developing the whale disentanglement team, and also our partners in Hawaii. Whales get entangled in fishing gear, typically crab pots or lobster pots, but all kinds of fishing gear really. And there have been NOAA, so National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Association, is the group that oversees all marine mammals after the Marine Mammal Protection Act was put into place. So because they've noticed that whales are getting entangled in a lot of gear, they wanted to be proactive, especially with the Northern Atlantic right whales that are severely endangered, and every individual animal in that population matters. So there's been a lot of fishery interactions with North Atlantic right whales where they're entangled, and it's causing either sublethal levels of issues where they're not reproducing because they get too skinny and they can't get pregnant, or lethal, and then they obviously can't continue to produce to that population in peril. So the large whale disentanglement team is something that we're very proud to be a part of at Pacific Marine Mammal Center. We have an incredible group that is on standby anytime we find a whale off of our coast. And NOAA will deploy us, and we do it under their guidance. And they always come out and help us. We're lucky to have two of the large whale disentanglement leaders from NOAA being right down the street from us. So they always come out, especially for ours. And we do have some funds going on to try and make this a little bit safer to disentangle these whales and try and figure out if there's some ways we can deliver medications to them. And I will say that's one of the funnest parts of my job. I like challenges. I get bored easily, and medicine can be a little bit monotonous sometimes, but when you're faced with these problems, when you have to figure out how you can deliver, an antibiotic dose to this 40,000 pound whale, that's where I really thrive and enjoy those problem solving things, and being able to bring engineers and other people from different coasts all together to try and figure out a solution to a very real problem for the population of whales off our coast. So we do get to work a little bit with whales, but definitely not in the hospital. And so we touched a little bit about rescue, rehab, and release. And Peter had mentioned that education and research are also at the cornerstone of our mission here. Education is one of my favorite things. I love seeing the little ones come through here and kind of get lit up when they see a sea lion or seal for the first time. And I do think making that connection for children is a lot of times what makes them have a pivotal point in their life to want to protect the ocean and maybe even figure out a career where they can help contribute to ocean conservation. So our education department is really crucial, and we have incredible K through 12 programs. We do a lot of things with underrepresented people in the community so they can come through and see things, which is awesome. And we're developing even more so some programs for students that are in undergraduate, and then also people that are getting master's degrees or PhDs, where we're not necessarily their primary advisors, but they come from outside universities, will spend some time here, and we have access to these samples that are quite challenging to get a hold of. So we're a small nonprofit, by no means do we have the bandwidth to do all of the research or answer all of the questions within our own staffing. And that's where we get a little help from our friends and where collaborations come into play. So if any of you guys are researchers or scientists or policy managers or anything like that, and you're interested in doing work, please reach out to us. That's how we increase our impact on a bigger level. So we'd be happy to help get you some samples or figure out ways that we can get you some experience that you need to do some additional work to help improve our impact. Also, for our marine mammal teaching hospital that we're trying to develop, we have the opportunity for veterinary technicians, veterinary students, and people that are veterinarians that are interested in learning about marine mammal health to come here and shadow our team for a while to learn a little bit about marine mammal medicine. It is really hard to get hands-on opportunities, particularly in an aquarium setting where those managed care animals are very coveted. Not that ours aren't, but a lot of times they're not going to let a visiting veterinarian practice on their managed care animals. Whereas when we're here, the animals that come into our center are incredibly sick. It's hard medicine, and usually you don't see such sick animals in an aquarium setting because they don't let them get there. So we are really, I guess, lucky in some sense that we get to practice this triage and emergency medicine that's very high level. We have to push the envelope to figure out how we can get IV access, for example, which is challenging in pinnipeds. We need to figure out different kinds of medications or try and figure out how we stop seizures in sea lions, how we rinse out toxins from them, how we deal with antibiotic resistance. So there's a lot of learning opportunities here. And by bringing in other veterinarians, not only do we teach them, but they bring in skills and they teach us too. So it's a very synergistic relationship. And it's probably one of the most exciting things that we're growing here at PMMC. And then research, we'll talk a little bit more in detail about some of our research projects, but that very much so is the cornerstone of trying to figure out solutions and problems that are out there. We'll talk about it a little bit, but I'll just say that unfortunately, because we are near a very urban center in Southern California, there's a lot of things that are entering our coastal ecosystem that we don't know what the impact of that's going to be it fertilizer, pesticides, plastics. And then we also know that unfortunately there's been a lot of DDT dumping right off of our coast, which is a pesticide that was used in the 30s to the 60s that has been associated with immune suppression and cancer. So our patients are kind of, we call them sentinels of the sea. They're barometers of ocean health, and they're bringing messages to us. So we do our normal diagnostic stuff to figure out how to treat those animals, and any blood samples that are left over we'll save and archive. So there can be researchers in the future to do things like looking at microplastics in our patients or contributing those to projects. So a lot of people see research and they kind of wonder, are you doing research on marine mammals? Indirectly, yes, we are, but we're doing it in collaboration with our clinical work that we're doing. So we're not like actually taking marine mammals out of the ocean and doing research on them. We're taking them out of the ocean and seeing what messages they can bring to us by doing the diagnostic tests they need for treatment, and then using those leftover samples for a better understanding of what's going on in the ocean. So just to kind of talk about our team here, I mentioned our volunteers, and I mentioned that we have a small staff, but we're very mighty. We have, if you added the accumulation of years of experience with just our small staff, we have a couple centuries worth of experience under our belt. And that has been really helpful for me. I've been here for about 2 years now, and the animal care is on cruise control here. They've been doing that for 50 years. When an animal comes to our hospital, we know exactly what we need to do. And our donors are very generous. And so we have a lot of great tools. We have endoscopy here. We have x-ray. We have 2 different x-ray units here. We have ultrasound. We have in-house blood work. We can run anesthesia here. So all of that is the support that we've been given from our community in order to provide healthcare for these sick marine mammals that are very coveted in our region. And we get to do a lot of cool stuff. And so, like I had mentioned before, we're not going to do experiments on marine mammals, but we will provide them with the best care possible. And then in that middle picture, you see an elephant seal laying on top of a table. And that is our veterinarian, Dr. Brown, sticking her head through that CT machine. And so that's us doing a CT on a northern elephant seal. Believe it or not, that's a baby northern elephant seal. And he had a pretty significant back injury, and we wanted to see what was going on and if we could do anything to help him. It's one of the first times the thoracic region of an elephant seal has been imaged like that. So not only do we use it as a diagnostic tool to figure out what was going on with poor Ace's back, but we can also use those images in the future to better understand anatomy and physiology of elephant seals, understand their blood vessels better, and then hopefully he can contribute things to our animal care team to help better improve our medicine in the future for other patients like him. So I'll say the patient on the upper left and towards the right of your screen was one of my favorites. That's sweet little Muffin. She had a pretty big defect, like laceration on the top of her nose, and it made water rush into her nasal plane and into her lungs. And we did everything we could to try and fix that, to the point where we even called in a human plastic surgeon. So we joke that she got a nose job, just like any OC person would be open to, trying to get her fixed. So being able to bring in those collaborators, those people that, as a veterinarian, I can do some marine mammal stuff, I can do some basic surgeries, but sometimes we need to bring in specialists from the outside to give our patients the best care possible. And then you can kind of see the two lower images is an adult male California sea lion on the left getting an ultrasound exam. When the patients get here, they literally get like the most intense doctor's appointment you could imagine. For the adult animals, that guy probably weighs close to 400 to 500 pounds. So we have to do that under general anesthesia. They don't participate in their medical care a lot of times. So he is under anesthesia. And we do basically full blood work. So we take a blood sample, we do ultrasound, we do x-rays or radiographs, and that's because we see a lot of gunshots, unfortunately, in our patients. So we want to rule that out, that they haven't been shot for some reason. And then they get, we take a number of other samples. So we'll do nasal swabs right now because we're trying to see if there's any COVID transmission to our patients. We'll do rectal swabs because we're looking at microbiomes. And those are only collected if the patient's being stable under anesthesia. So our first priority is diagnostics and patient stability, and then they get woken up and a treatment plan is developed for those animals. And then if you look in the middle picture, that's little Julius, one of my rock star patients. And I kind of say that as a joke because Julius ate 40 rocks. So his stomach was distended with rocks, and he got our team really proficient at doing endoscopy. We had to do 3 or 4 different procedures to actually fish all those rocks out of his stomach with a camera and little grabbers and pull them out of his mouth. But he made it, and he's out in the world. He's actually, that's him on my office. He was one of my favorites. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but he was the best. So we were really excited that we got him through. And that, again, is the result of our team coming together and providing the care that he needs. And then, like I said, we do take the show on the road. So that upper left picture is something that we see all too commonly, unfortunately. That is a California sea lion subadult male that is entangled in gill net. So those animals are quite challenging because typically they're healthy animals that were feeding around fisheries and then got wrapped up in a net. So they're a little bit harder to rescue, and they inevitably haul out on docks, which are challenging to capture them with the nets like we traditionally do when animals are on the beach. So we've developed a remote sedation team, which basically is a fancy word for us using a dart gun to deploy sedatives into that animal. So they'll fall asleep and make it easier for our team to actually capture and help that animal. So that's one of the ways we go out into the field and deliver medicine out in the field. And then also you can see that there's a dolphin right there sitting on the ground, and that's because that dolphin had stranded alive on one of our beaches. So we will go out to the beach and respond to live cetacean strandings. They usually don't turn out great. If a dolphin ends up on the beach or if a whale ends up on the beach, it's never a good sign. So that's just another part. We'll triage them and stabilize them here at the Pacific Marine Mammal Center, and we can keep them for about up to 72 hours, and that's enough to get them usually stabilized. And then we'll transport them down to SeaWorld for long-term care if they are rehabilitation candidates. And then that lower right picture is me this year. I went out to San Miguel Island, which is the primary rookery of California sea lions, and we did some population health studies to see how the population is faring this year, which helps us predict how busy our stranding season is going to be throughout the year. So I'm happy to report that those pups were like the fattest pups I've ever seen. I've been going out there for about 5 or 6 years now. And they looked fabulous. So we're hoping to have just a below average stranding season, and all the animals will be doing pretty good without our help. And then I also mentioned the story about Ace. I probably told a little bit too much in that earlier slide. This is where I was supposed to talk a little bit more about him and what we were doing. But we were really excited to be able to do this procedure on him. Elephant seals are notoriously challenging to keep stable under anesthesia. And that animal was under anesthesia stably for 3.5 hours to get his CT and MRI. So that's Sammy, who's a master's student from University of Miami, who did a project on sea lion cancer with us, but we plugged her in and everything. And now she's been inspired to potentially go to veterinary school because of her exposure. So that's just one example of how student she was here for 6 months, which is a long time. It was for her master's project. Most students only spend about 4 to 8 weeks with us. But for her, that 6 months probably changed her trajectory, and she is really into ocean conservation now. So we're really proud of her. And then that's an image of Ace. If any of you have ever had a slip disc, he probably one-ups your images, unfortunately. So you can kind of see, if I can get my mouse up there, that his spine is completely deviated and his disc is completely taken out there. And just, I had mentioned that this is one of the first times the thoracic cavity of an elephant seal has been imaged like this. So these images are circulating around a lot of us marine mammal vets to kind of see what's going on in there on a level like this. And then research. This is my area of passion, I guess, because I love fixing individual animals. I'm a veterinarian. When it comes to my day-to-day job here, it's my job to take care of animals and get them healthy. But releases sometimes are the hardest part for me because I know we're returning them out into an ocean that still has a lot of problems for them to face. So in doing research, it enables us to provide them a safer place to go to and help alleviate some of the problems that we've created out in their environment. And you can't just do research on marine mammals. Nothing kind of lives in a bubble. So we utilize them to help better understand the health of their environment and also understand infectious disease, not just within the marine mammal population, but in the ocean as a whole. So research is really, really important. And we want to do what we call impactful research that matters. So there's a lot of questions, basic science questions about marine mammals, and a lot of kind of paths you can get lost down that may not have, they may have significant answers to questions that people have about marine mammals in general, but our priority is to do research that can make an impact on a conservation population level. So sea lion cancer is one of our primary areas. It's what I did my PhD research in, and it's something I'm very passionate about. People don't realize, but sea lions off the California coast have the highest rate of cancer of any species in the world. So any wildlife species. So you know, as a vet, you start asking questions. Why are all my patients showing up with cancer? 1 in 4 adults, 1 in 4, 25% of adults that come through our center have cancer. That is insane. Like, it's less than 1% of the human population that has cancer. So that dichotomy makes you realize there's something going on out in their environment. So that's alarm bells for us to start doing research to help figure that out. And we're starting to figure out it's associated with a viral disease, a sexually transmitted herpes, believe it or not. Sea lions have STDs, and it's very similar to cervical cancer. All the sea lions get the same type of genital cancer, and it's a virally induced genital cancer like HPV, and cervical cancer is in people. So now these animals come in an end-stage disease and we have to euthanize them. It's the most humane thing to do, and they're too far down their disease process to even attempt to fix. But they can live on after that. We collect samples at necropsy from all of our patients, and those are the samples that we also use for research. So if a patient doesn't make it here, their story doesn't end. We continue to do research to better understand what happened with that individual animal and what they can tell us on a population level basis. And so that goes for fisheries interactions, domoic acid outbreaks, which is a toxin produced by a marine algae, that may be associated with runoff of fertilizer into the marine environment, causing these increased blooms and more toxic blooms that we've been seeing lately. And that results not only in seizures in sea lions and issues with cetaceans as well, but it can get into shellfish and cause a public health concern, call it amnesic shellfish poisoning. So they have to close fisheries down with these issues too. So we're trying to utilize sea lions to better understand some of those dynamics and how we can better predict when and where blooms are happening, so we can also protect the public from consuming that seafood. So I'm happy to answer more questions about any of our research. We have about 25 to 30 ongoing projects that we've developed only in the past 2 years. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about research. That could be a whole nother topic. And then I did mention earlier that unusual mortality events are something that are sending alarm bells off kind of all over, unfortunately. I think there used to be 9 unusual mortality events going on. I think they've closed a couple of them recently, but it basically means that marine mammals are dying at levels higher than historically expected baselines. So when you start seeing these mortality events that are an anomaly compared to what we are expecting, you need to start asking questions. And that's a large part of what we do in contributions to NOAA's investigations into these events. So right now we're currently in an unusual mortality event with gray whales along the whole western coast and also in Canada, Alaska, and Mexico. And that's been going on since 2019. And there's been over 491 whales that have washed up dead. So those are the only ones we know about. That doesn't even go to bridge the number of whales that potentially died at sea that we haven't been able to catch. But that is a significant increase from historical numbers. So there's a lot of research going into trying to figure out what's going on. It's still open and under investigation. So the cause technically has not been officially determined. But based off of our preliminary results, we're starting to suspect that it has something to do with environmental factors, and it may be a lack of prey or a lack of resources, because these animals are stranding very, very skinny and looks like they're starving to death. So a lot more work to be done on that. But when you start seeing numbers like this, if you look at the table on the right, you can tell that the numbers are declining. But seeing that these whales are not just stranding dead in one region, but all along the entire coast of their migratory path, goes to show this is a major ecosystem issue. This isn't an isolated event. So this just is one example of how marine mammals are telling us the secrets of the sea. When they show up on our coast dead or sick or injured, we need to start paying attention to those things and figuring out what we can do better to help conserve this incredible resource. And even if we can't prevent whatever is causing these unusual mortality events, we can now know that more gray whales died than should have over these past few years. So we need to put protections in place in the future so the whales that did make it through this unusual mortality event can bounce back from whatever it was that caused it. So sometimes it can be frustrating because you can't fix that infectious disease cause necessarily. I can't put more, not anytime soon, more krill in the ocean for them. But we could put more protections on that population so they can bounce back in a way that they can recover from this. And that really is the biggest mission that we have here. And like I mentioned, cetacean stranding responses are really challenging. On the left is a common dolphin, and those dolphins typically do strand around here. So it's not totally unexpected. But on the right is a kogia, and that kogia is stranded. It was the second or third kogia that had showed up that year, and we typically never see them. So when those things start happening, you need to start paying attention when unusual species too start showing up. So it was an interesting stranding, but we don't enjoy seeing weird things because that means something bad might be happening out there. And then I mentioned our whale disentanglement team, and this is a really important part of us being able to get out in the water and help these whales. This is a gray whale that's entangled, and with them being in an unusual mortality event, trying to help the ones that are doing well and getting entangled in fishing gear is just one more way we can try and help the population recover from that. So I think for time's sake, I'll just cut it there. And see if we want to have some questions. And then if we run out of questions, or if you guys are just ready for the tour, say the word and we can go downstairs and meet some of our patients.
Great. So folks should feel free to start typing some questions into the chat. And I had a couple of questions or things I thought would be interesting for you to touch on. I know you were mentioning when you have dolphins, you have about a 72-hour window when you keep them for, the harbor seals or sea lions. What's the average length of time that you're keeping those patients? I'm sure it varies, but.
Yeah, I would say the average time is about 3 to 4 months for our pups. They come in malnourished, so very skinny because they've been having a hard time figuring out how to fend for themselves when they're getting weaned from their mother. And a lot of times because they're malnourished, they're a little immune suppressed. So they also have secondary health issues that kind of layer on top of that. So it's like a little package deal. A lot of times they are malnourished with pneumonia, or they're malnourished and get septic or have abscesses. So like you said, some can take a little bit longer depending on what's going on with them. But we have a really great team that has perfected the art. I call it the reverse of Jenny Craig, where you come in skinny and you leave fat. That is our goal here. And Michelle Hunter, who is our animal care director, is a feeder. We joke that she just needs to make these animals gain more weight. And we like to actually release them with a little reserve, we call it. So make them a little bit thicker than they need to. So once they're back out in the environment, especially these young pups that haven't learned how to hunt or fend for themselves, they have a little bit of reserve so they can kind of figure it out before they start feeling weak and skinny again. So it takes about 3 to 4 months to get that weight. And they usually come in around, I usually do my weights in kilograms. So around 10 to 12 kilograms, which is around 20 to 25 pounds. And they typically leave here between 80 and 100 pounds. So it's a pretty impressive weight gain, for sure.
Excellent. And when you have patients that cannot be fully rehabbed and sent back to their natural environment, and I'm thinking of, we had the pleasure of meeting Gouda. What are you doing with those friends?
Yeah, that's probably the hardest part of my job, honestly, because I can fix a lot of stuff, but to fix everything to the point where these animals can fend for themselves out in the wild is sometimes impossible. So you were lucky enough to meet Gouda, and I saw somebody who's from Dallas, Texas. She's your neighbor now. She lives in Texas right now. So we can place those animals at aquariums. And that is one of the reasons why I'm incredibly grateful that we have aquariums and zoos that are willing to take on our animals. One of the hardest things that we're challenged with is if there's not a facility that can take an animal and the animal can't survive out in the wild, we may be forced to actually have to humanely euthanize them. So being able to have facilities that are willing to step up, not just to take on that animal, but to take on that animal for a lifetime, which in a sea lion can be 30, 35 years. It's no small commitment. And typically they come with some slight health issues, like Gouda was blind. She couldn't see. And she might have some slight brain and behavioral issues because of some domoic acid exposure we think that she got. But she's our miracle child. We had to bring her in to get her brain imaged for an MRI, and she crashed under anesthesia on us during that MRI, and we were able to resuscitate her and bring her back to life. And then the fact that her eyes went and she was blind after that was really defeating. So the fact that we could find a facility that was willing to take her on changed her life and really made us happy. So we do end up placing animals that can't be released. And sometimes it's a hard decision to make whether or not they can fend for themselves out in the wild. And sometimes we will give them that chance, but we don't want to put an animal out in the wild that can't fend for themselves. And then they're just going to suffer and expire or pass away.
Sure.
So
we have that's a good segue to a question that Bundy Boyd posted. Do you tag the patients so you can keep track of the animals after release? The ones that you're able to release?
Yeah, we do. I joke that we have kind of cheap jewelry and we have fancy jewelry around here. So our cheap jewelry is our flipper tags. So all animals that come through rehab centers get flipper tags. The sea lions get it in their front flippers, the seals get it in their back flippers, and those are just passive tags with unique number identifiers on them. So if somebody can snap a picture, or if they wash up sick or dead, we can identify that individual animal has been through a rehab, and then we can figure out their records from that number. Julius, I don't know if you can tell in that picture, he got some expensive jewelry because he was a special one. When we have research questions or we want to know their species of concern, we want to know if they're doing okay, we can put satellite tags on them. And those satellite tags kind of act as cell phones to where we can track their location about how they're moving in the environment. Depending on how much money we have that year from donors to do these tags, we can also get these tags that measure depth and dive time as well. So we can make sure that they're diving and having good foraging behavior. So there are ways that we can kind of creep on our patients after they've left and make sure that they're doing all right. Not every animal gets a satellite means. In fact, it's a unique situation when an animal is satellite tagged, but it really does tell us a lot of information about our success rate and how the animals are doing out there. Good question.
Cool, that's great. Another question is, what have you been learning about the effects of climate change on these animals and some extreme weather events that you've been seeing or other sort of climate change related factors? What are some of the trending things you're noticing?
Yeah, climate change has been tough. It's causing some major issues with the predictability of the physical conditions of the ocean. So temperature issues, dissolved oxygen issues, salinity issues, and there's everything in moderation. My grandmother taught me, don't overdo anything. So even things like excessive freshwater runoff in the Gulf of Mexico completely changed the entire salinity of the northern Gulf of Mexico from 33 parts per thousand to under 5 parts per thousand. And that resulted in a die-off of almost 250, 300 dolphins during that rainy year in 2019. And that is associated with climate change. So not a lot of people think just because there's a lot of snowpack in Colorado, that's going to lead to dead dolphins in the northern Gulf of Mexico, but that's exactly what happened. And just like the pup unusual mortality event that I told you about, that for sea lion babies from 2013 to 2016, those animals were being impacted from climate change because the water was warmer off our coast than it had ever been. And sea lion babies can only go so far away from where they were born, the islands where they were born at called rookeries, and they can only dive so deep when they're still these young little things. So fish are ectothermic, they take their temperature from their environment. So if the water is too warm and they're not enjoying it, they can either go deeper or move further out. And the sea lion pups then don't have that beautiful resource of fish that is why the Channel Islands are their rookeries. They're moved too far away. So that's a very hard connection to make initially with why all these starving sea lions are coming, but it was very clear after that investigation that it was the result of increased ocean temperatures off our coast. So it is scary. Buy a hybrid or an electric vehicle and do your part for sure. Those are harder problems to solve, you know.
Absolutely. Alex, any other questions right now?
No, not right now. I'm
All right.
keeping an eye out though. I'll let you know if something pops up.
That sounds great. I say let's go for a tour.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to go downstairs. It's going to be loud, so I apologize in advance. The animals, when I try and talk louder, they talk louder. If you can't hear me, you can say something. I have Dr. Kaylee manning the camera, and I will do my best so you can hear me, and we'll introduce you to a few of our patients, and then we can answer some questions too at the end of the tour. Okay?
Okay.
All right. So follow me.
Great.
And I'm hoping that Dr. Kaylee, let me unshare my screen. Since she's Peter, I'm hoping she's going to be able to take over from here. But if we have technical difficulties, I apologize in advance.
Okay.
All right, let's go.
Great. Peter, what are some ways people can learn more about what you guys do? What are some of the areas where people can follow you guys, stuff like that?
Yeah, our website's great. We have a ton of information there. We're doing a ton of stuff lately, so that's a great way to learn about all the education programs, all the research programs, and even about all the patients that we have in-house. We have about 20, I think it's 27 patients in-house. Follow us on social media. I think it's at Pacific MMC. We have an amazing social media person that's putting up great patient stories every single day, as well as she highlights some different things about what we're doing. So please check us out on all the different social media platforms. So right now,
if you do follow us on social media, you'll get to meet a lot of these little ones. So this is Ronin and Chico. And it's unfortunate Chico isn't doing his little trick because he likes to roll himself up like a burrito in the blankets. It's adorable. But if you look at Ronin down here in the pool, Ronin actually has a large patch of tar or oil on his side. So we're slowly trying to get that out of his fur. And he's trying to learn how to eat fish. So you can see him suckling on that fish. We're trying to explain to him that that's not how that works. That's how his mom fed him, but this fish he's going to need to swallow whole. So we have to do something called fish school sometimes with these little ones to get them to figure out that they actually need to swallow the fish whole and not suckle it. So Ronin's working on that, but also pay attention to how skinny Ronin is and how tiny both of these animals look and how quiet they are. And then as we make our way outside of the barn, you're looking at our ICU unit right here. So this is where the animals come in when they're first here. And it's our critical care. The floors are heated, so we have heated tile floors because oftentimes they're very cold when they come in and they're very skinny, so they don't thermoregulate well. And as they start putting on a little bit of weight, we move them down the hall, and you'll see how the animals start thickening up as our tour goes along, and then they eventually make it to our outside pools. So those are our little ones here. And then you guys should recognize what this guy is, because you're lucky enough to have them, or at least those of you in the New England area. That is a little harbor seal. And so this guy came in yesterday. It's actually quite early for our harbor seal to be presenting. So this animal is very young and in pretty critical condition right now. But we've got fluids on him. He's probably got a little bit of pneumonia, and we're trying to get some food in him. So he's stabilizing, but definitely nowhere near out of the woods. And then real quickly, we'll just take a peek into our hospital. Meet Alexandra, our amazing animal care supervisor. She's here 4 days a week, but she works 10-hour days, so it's more than a full-time job for her. And this just kind of shows you guys the limited space we work in, but we do a lot of magic in here. So we have in-house blood work machines, we have an x-ray machine, we have water quality stuff, we have a surgical area where we can scrub our instruments and scrub in for surgeries. We have all of our fluids. And then everything is kind of on wheels, and we can bring it to our patients. So we have our ET tubes, our endotracheal tubes. We have things to place catheters and do blood samples with. All of our sterile surgical stuff. And then our emergency drugs and our monitoring equipment. So we kind of break down and set up our hospital depending on what procedures we have, how big our patients are, and what we need for each procedure. And then if you look at this is our little blood kit. So we bring things on the road a lot, or we bring things pen side. So we won't bring animals in here a lot of times. We'll actually go out into the pens to work them up out in the pens. So this is just an easy grab and go. So we have everything we need to take a blood sample, to administer medications, take their temperature, check their blood glucose. Any of you that are diabetic probably recognize this alpha trap. We use the same thing for our animals to make sure they're not hypoglycemic. And then we have some emergency sugar in case they are, because these little ones can get hypoglycemic easy. So our little to-go kit that we bring around, which is awesome. Shout out to our vet assistant, Elena, who put that together for us, and we don't have to spill our other kit everywhere all the time. And then here are some of our volunteers. So I told you guys our volunteers do a lot, and they take care of all of our animals. So very rarely do they get a break. They get them fed, they keep them clean, and they provide their medications during their stay here. And then if you look at this board, this is our rounds board, or our patients board, and this kind of goes through every patient that's up on the main part of the board is currently under treatment, and then it shows what their problems are, what their medications that they're getting are, and what the plan is. So this is just every morning we meet down here as an animal care group, and we kind of go over each patient individually, and then we also go over any cautions or comments that the animal care crews need to be aware of, like an animal has an injured left flipper, so be careful when you're boarding them or handling them. And then every animal kind of has this feed sheet, and these feed sheets are broken down. Each column kind of tells you by which feed how much they get and what medications that they need. So our volunteers and our animal care staff are really great at paying attention to all of this, and this is what we do to figure out to make sure that animals are getting their meds. Okay, then there's lots of laundry. Our animals, like I said, can be cold, so they need blankets sometimes. So there's a lot of laundry to be done, especially in the mornings around here. And then our fish room, you can probably see we have a lot of, this is the equivalent of a lunch for a big sea lion. So they get fed anywhere from 3 to 6 times a day, depending on how old they are or where they're at in the rehab process. So our volunteers are responsible for measuring out all those food, making sure that we've thought out enough fish for them to eat. And then also we do formulas. So a lot of the animals that come in that are really young, like I said, they don't know they need to eat fish yet, and their GI tract isn't processing very well. So we actually have to make fish smoothies for them. And then we use these little tubes, and we feed them into their mouth, down their esophagus, and into their stomach. And then we give them, we joke that they're Jello shots, because we have these little containers that we put their fish meals in.
And then we just kind of push that into the tube and directly into their stomach. We can put any medications that they need to be on in these. And it really helps get their GI tract kind of moving and processing the fish in a way that we can start feeding them full fish so they can start gaining weight. So now you're gonna see these are less chunky ones, but they're stable enough to be out of the ICU. So you can tell they're still kind of skinny, still kind of not as active. Noisier. You can tell they're looking much better. So if you look at that dude, who is that? Ralphie. Ralphie. Okay. So Ralphie is the bigger one. He came in right around Christmas. His name is an homage to A Christmas Story. And he came in at about 11 kilograms, so around 25 pounds. And now he's probably close to 80. So he's looking good. And you can see his flipper tag on him, that little orange tag on him. That means he's passed his wellness exam. And then those little shave marks you see on him is how we identify the animals when they first come in. And so the shave marks are individual for each animal. So we don't have to put a flipper tag in them right when they come in. We can just look at their shave marks and tell them apart and see who needs what meds. If we move out this way, I'll show you one more. Well, you can see BW. Oh, that's not BW. Maybe Brittle? Yes. Brittle. So she's a little skinny too, and you can see the ones napping outside in the sun poolside, living their best life. And then last up, we have one of my favorite patients. Her name is Candle. She was a domoic acid animal, which is post-domoic acid. She's an adult female California sea lion that presented having seizures. And she was practically comatose when she first came in. So if you can tell, it may be challenging, but her right eye is deflated and there's an issue with it. And then her left eye, initially when she presented, she was blind and couldn't see. And that had to do with the brain inflammation associated with the toxin causing seizures. But this morning we just did a live fish test because we wanted to make sure she could officially see. You can see she's not paying attention because it's her bad eye. But she can track my hand a little bit, but we wanted to make sure she could chase and catch live fish before we released her. So this morning was her official live fish test and she got an A+, so she will probably be released sometime next week. And she is fat and beautiful and ready to roll. So that's a healthy California sea lion, adult. And then these are healthy California sea lion pups. So as you can see, these ones look a lot bigger than the ones you just saw in the unit. But these animals are the same age as the animals in the unit. So sea lions are all born between June and July. So every baby sea lion you see here is about 9 months old now. So those skinny ones that you just saw in the units are literally the same age. And these animals looked exactly like those animals about 2 or 3 months ago. So it just goes to show how good our team here is at getting weight on these animals and getting them stabilized. And this group of animals is actually going to be brought out to San Miguel Island and released out there because they stranded when they were very young. So we want to make sure they stay out of trouble when we let them go and they know where they're going. So I think that's all of our patients and we're probably coming close to time. So if you guys have any questions, I can see if I can hear you over these guys and I can run up to my office if we're having any issues.
That was great. It's so fun to get to revisit this place and see how healthy everybody's looking. Can you talk a little bit? I know it's always fun for people to sort of check in on progress of certain animals. Talk about, I know you guys have a live feed, right? Where people can watch the pools and stuff.
Yes, we do. So if you go to our website, there is a link where you can just go to see one of our cameras live. And we're actually a part of an information or a website. What is it called? Zoo. I should know this.
Zoo Life.
There it is. Zoo Life. Peter's got it. And Zoo Life has live cameras, and if you have to wait in line if there's a lot of people on it, but you can actually take control over the camera and zoom in on your favorite patients, which is really cool. But the live cams are always up and running on our website as well, and it is really fun. I mean, sea lions are my favorite for a reason. They're hilarious. They like to play. They like to cause trouble. They have such personalities, so I watch them all day. So I highly recommend if you're sitting around bored and you want some really good entertainment to come in and watch. And inevitably they'll be taking a nap. That's probably right after feeding time. They're like me too. They like to eat and nap poolside as much as possible. So you might see a little bit of that action as well.
Excellent. That's so fun to get to check in with everybody there.
Oh, we
Good.
have a
Alex, looks like we've got a question.
Yeah. Kate Harris would like to know, did your organization get any funding from the U.S. versus Montrose Corporation settlement, the DDT dolphin settlement?
No,
Alex, can you repeat
unfortunately,
that
we
again?
did not. That's a really
Oh,
good
for
question.
the DDT.
There has been a lot of litigations. Is that Peter talking? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I
Go
can't
ahead,
hear.
Alyssa.
There has been some litigation associated with it, and they've made the area where the point source dumping was a super fun site. But we haven't gotten any funds directly from that, but we are hoping there's going to be some state funds opened up to do some monitoring and better understanding of the impact of the DDT barrels that were most recently discovered around Catalina Island, which is right off our coast where our animals are probably coming from. So we do hope to get in on some of that so we can do some testing of our patients to measure how much DDT is actually in them.
I'll just add on to that. Most of our funding comes from individual donors and family foundations and corporate foundations. We, on occasion, we do get some governmental funds, but it is not consistent. It's not a big percentage of our budget. But we are very lucky with these animals and the community that we're in. We get supporters that just, are very passionate and want to see us do what we do.
Absolutely. I know when I was there and got to walk around with Peter a bit at that time, even though the oil spill had happened, you guys weren't seeing that many patients that were affected by that, which was so fortunate. Has that changed since December for you guys? I know that one of the little pups that we saw did have some oil on it. Have you seen more animals coming in?
Not specifically with this oil spill. I think we were really lucky that the marine mammals were not significantly impacted, that from what we could tell from the initial response, at least. If there's ever a good time for an oil spill, October off our coast is that. And that's because most of the pinnipeds are still with their mothers nursing, and they haven't started exploring their environments yet. So if that oil spill would have happened this time of year, all of these pups that you see here more than likely would have been oiled. But because it happened back in October when they were on the islands with their mom, we haven't seen a lot of impact, at least on the pinnipeds. But that is all still very much so under investigation, and we played a large part in collecting samples for that investigation, and that will be a long time going before any of that kind of comes to fruition. And I will say that there has been some recent tar balls showing up on our beaches more recently. So we don't know if that's from the previous event or if there's something else going on. But it definitely made us kind of amp up our training and make sure that we were ready for a response just in case a spill like that ever does happen in a bad place. So we will be ready to respond in the future if we have a lot of oiled animals coming through here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that, speaking of sort of planning for the future, we talked about climate change a little bit. I know you guys are undergoing or about to undergo some big expansions there and a water reclamation project. Do either you or Peter want to chat about what that is? Because water's a big, in Maine, we don't think about water as much as you guys do out in Southern California. So what have you got going on there?
Yeah, we definitely have to think about it more, just because the drought situations that we seem to be in more often than not. I hate to say this, but we are the number two water user in this water district, and it's because we have these animals that have compromised immune systems, so we have to constantly keep them or make sure that they're in pristine water. And unfortunately, over the years, what we have as a water filtration system is really built up of antiquated parts that were donated to us. So it can't handle the biomass of these animals. So a big part of our expansion, which will actually hit every aspect of our operations, will be creating a water reclamation and recycling system. It actually, in the background of the pool that you see right now on your screen, there's those stakes that are with flags in the background. And that's actually our new water rec building that we're hoping we get the permit for to break ground later this year. And that's going to allow us to reclaim, somewhere around 80% of our water. It'll also allow us to provide the most pristine water to the animals at all times, because they are susceptible to issues even once they get here. And we definitely don't like that. So it'll play a huge role and allow us to incorporate, having this on-site water reclamation system will allow us to incorporate water conservation in a meaningful way in our education curriculum.
That's so great. And you guys are doing just such cool stuff with education and helping sort of get the next generation of voters and leaders and scientists up to speed on some of these best practices. So that's so great. Alex, any other thoughts from you or things from the chat that we might have missed?
No, nothing from the chat. I guess just seeing the nice weather there makes me long for summer a little bit here. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, that was great. It was really great to see what you all do, and the virtual tour was really awesome. That was a great addition to that. A lot of our webinars don't have that component, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, this was great. This is really fun to get to share what you guys are doing out there with folks here. And yeah, any closing thoughts from you, Peter or Alyssa?
I'll just say thank you guys for having us, and I'm really excited to kind of beam our patients all across the US. So keep up the good work that you guys do. We appreciate all of you being advocates for the environment, whether or not it's terrestrial or ocean. So thank you guys all so much. We appreciate your support.
Thank you, guys.
That's great. Thank you so much. And folks who
That's
are
great.
watching, if you're finding any stranded mammals on our beaches here on the East Coast, please contact Allied Whale, and don't ever approach any of our harbor seals or anything like that you see, because it could be dangerous to you and the seal. So we've got good experts on both coasts ready to help. So thank you so much again, Peter and Alyssa. This was a real treat. And I'll show off. I'm wearing my shirt. I don't know if you can see it, but my PMMC shirt, and they've got a great gift shop on their website too. So we'll call it a night, and thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Bye.
Thanks.